Chapter 22, Part 2. The demon Kalthus swats the mages back, a powerful gust of wind-like energy slamming against them. Both girls are worn from the battle, covered in blood and bruising. Danny glances down at her bracers in concern. The reading of 18% is not good news. With a disfigured, humanoid face with the skin pulled too tightly and not quite aligned correctly, and a muscular body pale like a corpse, the Skilzosh demon is one of the demon species' most deadly races. A single horn on the demon's head flashes brightly each time it uses a magical attack. The only weakness the girls have been able to make any use of in their attempts to evade its deadly attacks. Another peculiar feature of the Skilzosh are that they have no eyes, making all of their other senses greatly heightened. Kalthus's horn glows just before he throws a hand out towards Hlaguor, paralyzing her completely. With its other hand, the demon draws a sword of a fallen warrior to it. Danny screams, hurling Agnestra fire at the demon, and breaking its concentration as it is forced to pivot and cut through the spell with its sword. The charge of Danny's bracers drops to 16%. Knowing she can't worry about that now, Danny begins to focus and visualize the magical symbols comprising her next spell. Indamarian, Danny shouts, transforming the ground below the demon's feet into mud. As the demon sinks off balance, the mage launches a second spell. Inazamastra! Lightning magic floods into the demon, illuminating its body with flashes of electrocution. Seeing Danny making headway, Hlaguor adds her own offense. While not nearly as skilled in combat, Hlaguor is still familiar with the basic elemental attacks. Agnestra, she shouts, hitting the demon in the chest with a magical fireball. Kalthus's horn glows just before dispelling all of the magic around him. The demon throws a hand out, sending his own lightning magic into the girls. Restrainta, Hlaguor shouts, wrapping magical chains to bind the demon's wrists and ankles. Tico Shantate! A network of energy lines crisscross over the demon before solidifying into a cocoon. Danny drops to a knee, smoke rising from her body. Her chest heaves and she struggles to ignore the pain, screaming throughout her body. Hlaguor glances over at her companion and moves a hand towards her while keeping the other pointed at Kalthus. Dukon Heles! Assisting Danny with a healing spell, Hlaguor proves her skill as a support mage. Danny stands up, the damage from the lightning reversed. Thanks, she says. Don't thank me. Just figure out how to kill this bastard, Hlaguor says, straining to keep the demon bound. Cracks form on the magical cocoon as Kalthus begins to overpower the spell. Danny looks at her bracers with frustration. 9%. I'm not sure that I have enough power left to finish him off. He's managed to shrug off everything we've thrown at him. With a shout of exertion, Kalthus rips free of the binding spell. The negative feedback knocks Hlaguor to the ground. Kalthus looks at the stunned mage and lifts her into the air with a telekinetic spell. Hlaguor claws at her throat as she is lifted, indicating to Danny that she is being choked. Danny hurls several fire spells at the demon, breaking his concentration. Hlaguor, You're gonna have to kill him, Danny shouts. I'm almost completely out of magic power. I'm gonna try and fight him hand to hand and recharge a little. While I have him engaged, you've gotta pull something big off. I can't, Hlaguor shouts. I don't have anything strong enough to defeat him. That's bullshit. You trained on the ship just like the rest of us. I know you're scared, but you can do this. Danny rushes forward, throwing a roundhouse kick to the side of Kalthus's head. The demon blocks with a forearm, forcing Danny to counter with a knee to the gut from the other leg. The demon blocks with his other hand and punches Danny with a hard, downward right hook. Danny drops low and quickly rises, trying for an uppercut to the chin. Kalthus grabs Danny's arm, headbutting her, followed by multiple jabs to her body. Danny takes a ton of damage and so far has been unable to gain any magic power. Kalthus grabs Danny by the back of the head and slams her face into the ground, running forward and using her to pile up dirt. Danny is barely moving as Kalthus lifts her into the air. I've got to do something, Hlaguor thinks. Danny is right. I didn't do all that training for nothing. I can't stand by while she risks her life to fight this monster. I have magic power and Danny doesn't. Yet she's acting like nothing has changed. I can't be the weak link on this team. I have to help my friends and stop relying on them to save me. Biting her finger, Hlaguor uses her blood to quickly draw a 2-ring spell circle around her. Summoning magic. Valkyria, Hlaguor, Svanvit. Hlaguor chants, placing both hands within the center of the circle. A female warrior in shining gold and white armor rises from the spell circle and draws a shining sword. Hlaguor steps out of the circle and points her blade at Kalthus, challenging him to battle. Kalthus cocks his head, sensing the arrival of powerful holy magic. Hlaguor rushes Kalthus, striking repeatedly with lightning-fast blows. The demon defends each strike with the sword he picked up earlier, but loses ground to the summoned Valkyrie as she does not let up. The force and speed of the Valkyrie's attacks begin to wear on the demon. Hlaguor screams with her next swing, emitting a flash of holy light that knocks Kalthus back. The demon lands in a crouch, snarling with anger. Hlaguor runs at Kalthus, who swings with an overhead smash. The Valkyrie sidesteps and slashes upward with her sword. The strike scrapes across the demon's tough hide, and he pivots, kicking her twice into the air. Hlaguor flips in the air and uses her sword to block as Kalthus attempts to hit her while she is airborne. The Valkyrie pushes back against the demon into another flip, but Kalthus does not allow her to land, leaping above her and striking downward. The Valkyrie hits the ground hard, and Kalthus immediately lands with a powerful backhand across the face. Hlaguor skids back, taking serious damage. Hlaguor drops to a knee, coughing up blood. Balling her fists, the mage forces herself to stand up straight and continue directing her summoning to the attack. The Valkyrie and demon dart across the beach, clashing with sword strikes that are so fast that most human eyes are not able to follow. Hlaguor screams, coming down with an overhead slash. Putting all of her strength into the swing, the impact swells a crater out beneath Kalthus as he defends with a forearm. The Valkyrie's sword has finally broken through the demon's hide, sinking deeper into his arm. Kalthus backswings his own sword, knocking Hlaguor back. Nearing the time limit of Hlaguor's plummeting stamina, the Valkyrie begins to slow. They both know that Hlaguor needs to end the battle with her next attack. Dani sits up, barely regaining consciousness. She looks on as Hlaguor strains to keep her Valkyrie manifested. Despite being impressed by her friend's skillful summoning, she knows that Hlaguor won't be able to maintain it for long. Summoning magic is very powerful, but the drawback is that it is severely stamina taxing. Summoning cannot be used in prolonged situations. Dani wishes that she could help support Hlaguor and lend her the strength to keep fighting, but her attempts to recharge her bracers were unsuccessful, and they only led to her being beaten in hand-to-hand combat and sustaining more damage than before. Kalthus is too powerful for Dani to fight without magic, leading to her previous beating. If she tries again, she could be killed. The Valkyrie dodges several punches, Kalthus infusing his demonic power into his fists, causing them to glow bright red. If the demon manages to land a punch, the result would be catastrophic damage. Blocking with her sword, the Valkyrie skids back several feet before pivoting to snap a quick kick at the side of Kalthus' head. The demon's horn glows brightly just before the Valkyrie's leg is spun around by magic. Her back now to the demon, Kalthus strikes out with a straight right to the center of her spine. Before the blow can connect, Dani intercepts to take the punch to her own chest. The teen is sent flying backwards, where she hits the ground and lies motionless once more. Unable to worry about whether her friend is alive or dead, Hlaguor immediately seizes on the opening and has her Valkyrie put all of her magic power into one final strike. The Valkyrie thrusts forward, her sword piercing Kalthus' fist. The flesh around the demon's hand dissolves, burning away his arm. Stunned, Kalthus reacts too slowly, trying to strike with his other arm. The demon is too late, as the Valkyrie strike continues forward, blasting away most of his torso. Kalthus drops to his knees, his horn turning black. The demon slumps forward, dead. Dani, are you alright? Hlaguor asks, rushing to her friend's side. Dani groans, slowly opening her eyes. Did you win? Hlaguor smiles, nodding. Yeah, it's over. Good, Dani groans, because there was nothing I could do to help. You motivated all of us to train hard. If it wasn't for you, I'd never have had the strength to pull off a summoning magic as strong as that. Dani sits up, still in pain. You sell yourself short. You have a lot more to offer than you think. Do you think everyone else is okay? Hlaguor asks. Dani is also concerned. I have no idea. If there are other creatures here as strong as that demon, we're all in trouble. Suddenly, the power of the seal ability initiated across all of Jockey activates, forcefully slamming all of the power of the demon Kalthus into Hlaguor and knocking the girl to her back. Dani rushes to her friend's side, but is distraught to find that she has been knocked unconscious. What is worse is that more monsters begin to approach the girls from the tree line. They view the humans as especially weak and vulnerable. They think that they are easy prey. And if Hlaguor does not waken soon, they will be correct. Jake ducked beneath the wickedly curved spear of a snarling, dog-faced goblin, called Dokahebi, the tip slicing through the air just above his head. The creature's mottled gray skin was caked in dirt and filth, its long, tattered ears twitching as it bared a mouthful of jagged yellow fangs. Beady red eyes burned with feral hatred, and its mangy, matted fur bristled along its hunched back. Seizing the opening, Jake pivoted sharply, driving his foot into the goblin's groin with a brutal kick. The creature let out a strangled yelp, its spear clattering to the ground as it doubled over, shuddering in agony. Before it could recover, the underbrush behind it exploded outward as several demons emerged from the forest, their hulking forms breaking through the twisted foliage. The first to step forward was a towering brute, its skin blackened and cracked like molten rock, glowing embers pulsing beneath the surface. A crown of jagged horns framed its monstrous face, and its eyes burned like smoldering coals. The goblin barely had time to look up before the demon's massive, clawed foot came down with a sickening crunch, grinding the smaller creature into a gruesome smear of blood, shattered bone, and shredded flesh. The demon sneered, lifting its foot to reveal the mangled remains, then turned its smoldering gaze towards Jake, its lips peeling back in a cruel grin. "We heard you was the boy who fought in Yana and survived." The demon, large and horned with a body like a tank, says. Jake nods. "Yeah, I kicked her ass. You looking for a pregame warm-up?" The demon laughs. "We've lived on this world far longer than you or the Yazata. With the Banu Kazka, we will recover all that we have had stolen from us." Banu Kazka, huh? That's the weapon's name? Good to know, Jake says. "Arrogant little boy," the demon growls. "Do you know how many little boys like you I have devoured?" Look, I know you're trying to come off sounding threatening, but that was totally pedo, man. The demon takes a step forward, but a shadow speeds out of the forest directly into him. Stunned, the demon moans, staring up at the sky. Hui groans, crawling to his feet. He turns to retaliate against Descarina, but instead sees Jake standing nearby. The two lock eyes, and neither moves for what seems like an eternity. "I told you that we would meet again on my terms, not yours," Hui grins. The demons move in, angered at the interruption, but Hui quickly takes their heads with the swipe of a single hand. Black energy erupts all around Jake, and his hair darkens with an oily sheen that also leaks out around his eyes. "You ran away because you were afraid of me." Instead of drawing on his own energy, Jake draws from the powers of Yamura instead. "Afraid of you? Kid, I barely know you. Yamura is who I am here to kill," Hui says, dismissing the team. "You are not even worth my time." Jake screams, leaping at Hui. "You'll never survive me to face him." Hui grabs Jake's fist as he attacks, releasing the teen's energy outward in an arc that levels several nearby groves of trees. I was the Grand General that Gyomora could never be. He was always my lesser. Hui lowers Jake's fist, striking him in the chest with his other arm. How did you think that a mere human would fare any better? Jake coughs, saliva and blood spraying out from his mouth. The teen attempts to counter by bringing up a knee, but Hui slams him over his shoulder so that his back hits the ground. Not giving up, Jake's energy flares out briefly and he moves behind Hui in an instant. Before Jake can attack, Hui throws a fist backwards into the teen's face. Nose busted open and bleeding, Jake stumbles back. Hui grabs him by the hair and punches him in the face before kneeing him in the chest. The teen attempts a pained scream but cannot utter a sound. I told you that you are not worth my time, child. When we fought before, you gained an advantage only because I was not used to this vessel. Now that I am fully in control, you are nothing more than a joke. Gyomora, come out and face me, Hui taunts, kicking Jake in the ribs. Before I kill your human. A burst of energy slams into Hui, propelling him through several large trees. The Sakari drops to his hands and knees, blood running down his face and chest. Damned bitch, Hui coughs. Descarina wraps one of her tails around Jake's throat and uses the other two to spread his arms apart. He is mine to kill, Sakari. Who the hell are you to interfere in my battle? Hui growls, standing back up. With the brief distraction of their argument, Jake is able to focus just enough to summon his familiar. Amarok, the teen coughs. With a bright blue flash, the spirit wolf materializes from Jake's aura and leaps through two of the tails, biting them in half. Jake drops to the ground and scrambles away to safety, keeping both of his foes in front of him. Descarina reels back in pain, blood spurting from her severed appendages. We can't fight both of them, Jake worries. Things aren't looking so good. Hui is risking Inyana's wrath by attacking us before the tournament. Her instructions were for us to face each other in the finals, Gyomora says. There's a shrine to one of the Fae nearby, Amarok says, sensing the energy of his ancestors. We may be able to gain access, and some protection from it. Jake sprinted through the dense forest, his feet pounding against the mossy ground, his branches lashed at his arms and face. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient wood, the dim moonlight barely piercing the tangled canopy above. His familiar Amarok, a spectral wolf with shimmering silver fur and piercing blue eyes, moved effortlessly ahead of him, weaving through the undergrowth like a shadow. Behind him, the pursuit was relentless. Hui's heavy footfalls crushed the foliage beneath him, his raw power sending tremors through the ground with each stride. His breath came in low, measured growls, and the burning intensity of his energy crackled in the air like a storm on the horizon. Descarina, swift and silent, was no less dangerous. The assassin moved with deadly grace, flitting between the trees like a ghost, her claws extended like blades, gleaming wickedly in the slivers of the moonlight. Both warriors sought his life, but only one would have the honor of ending it. Jake pushed forward, his lungs burning as the forest suddenly opened up into a small clearing. He skidded to a halt, his eyes sweeping over the space. Half a dozen or so large stones jutted from the earth, their surfaces worn and cracked with age. They were arranged in no discernible pattern, scattered like forgotten relics of a time long past. A hush settled over the clearing, an eerie stillness that made the hairs on the back of his neck rise. "Is this it?" Jake muttered, catching his breath. "Looks like nothing but rubble." Amarok slowed to a stop beside him, his spectral form shimmering faintly in the dim light. His voice, low and tinged with sorrow, carried an ancient weight. "No one has honored this shrine in many centuries. Whatever fae dwelt on this island have long been forgotten by humanity." A chill rolled through the clearing as if the land itself mourned. The stones, though weathered, seemed to hum with something beneath the surface, something waiting, slumbering. "Can you commune with them?" Jake asks. "I can try." Amarok enters into communion with the Fae, expanding his awareness into the higher plane that spiritual beings dwell within when they do not wish to be seen. Fluttering spirits like burning insects fly around the shrine ruins. None of the creatures pay the wolf any mind. "Is anyone listening?" Amarok asks. "Is there still a higher consciousness guarding over this island?" Before Jake could ask Amarok another question, the rustling of the leaves and the sound of snapping branches behind him shattered the moment. Descarina had arrived at their location first, cutting Jake off from escape with a burst of energy ahead. Jake backflips, the flames of the explosion boxing him in. The team hopes his familiar can figure something out, but in the meantime, he can't stand around to do nothing. If she wants a fight, he will give her one. "Ymura," Descarina growls. Jake tries to buy some time. The longer he can stall her, the more time Amarok has to get the Fae on their side. "I see my reputation precedes me." "Shut up," she growls. "I'm addressing Ymura, not you." "What? You can't wait for the tournament to satisfy your death wish?" Descarina whips her tails quickly at Jake, slamming them into his chest. In order to take less damage and prevent his ribs from being crushed, Ymura quickly takes control. The Sicarii shakes off the attack, lunging at Descarina with slashing of his claws. She throws her arms up, blocking with the shield-like plating on her forearms. Ymura hops back and lunges again with a head-level swipe. Descarina ducks and extends long horns from her shoulders. The appendages pierce Ymura through his right bicep and thigh, giving Descarina the chance to kick the Sicarii high up into the air. She leaps above him, backflipping and knocking him into the ground with her tails. Landing hard on his back, Ymura struggles up to his feet and spits a mouthful of blood to the side. Descarina lands beside Ymura, and he immediately leaps at her, but she turns and grabs each of his arms with one of her tails to hold him in place. Descarina grins as she slowly presses an index finger into Ymura's side. "You really don't remember me, do you?" Descarina asks. Ymura spits blood into his attacker's face. "You are just another soon-to-be victim." She pushes her index finger in deeper. "I did this to you once before. You repaid me by shoving my head through a wall." "The doctor's assistant," Jake says. "You were right. It is her." "She has held a grudge against us," Ymura says. "We should have killed her before. This is the consequence of sparing your foes. You give them the opportunity to return later and become an even bigger problem. She was nowhere near our level of power before, Jake says in confusion. How did she gain this much strength? Yamura ponders this for a moment, analyzing his foe carefully. She has augmented herself artificially. None of this new power was gained through effort. Does that really matter? However she got the power, it's definitely not something to ignore. She's elevated herself to become a real threat here. You have had all of this time to cultivate your hatred. And this is the most pain that you can inflict, Yamura taunts. I'm disappointed. Angered, Descarina begins to pull his arms apart, causing Yamura to scream loudly and lose his calm demeanor. You looked down on me before, but you cannot do that anymore. Not only have I caught up to you, I have surpassed you. Yamura tries to throw an elbow back into Descarina's face, but she catches the attack with one of her tails and pierces his arm with an extended, horn-like growth. The Sakari screams out in pain, eliciting a slight grin on the woman's face. Suddenly, a burst of energy explodes in front of Descarina, causing the assassin to flinch from the debris. Despite the distraction, Yamura is unable to escape Descarina's grasp, and the enhanced assassin continues to inflict more pain. Enough! He shouts, finally catching up with them. You are not to kill him. He is mine to kill, and only in the tournament. It has been promised by Queen Inyana. Descarina scoffs, continuing to torture Yamura. Like I care what your queen declares. Don't you dare speak with such disrespect towards Queen Inyana. He screams, running at Descarina. The two powers collide violently, trading hard blows back and forth. Yamura switches control back over to Jake to conserve stamina. Now would be the best time for us to leave. Amarok! The spirit wolf hears his name being called and makes one final plea before departing. The evil forces on this island seek to not only destroy humanity, but it would also wreak havoc over the entire universe. All mortal life will suffer. Plants, animals, not even the Fae will be immune. You can no longer remain neutral and stay in hiding. Now is the time. The time that we must all choose our sides. With no response, Amarok returns to Jake, and they quickly run off. Descarina and Hui continue battling, until they notice that Jake has escaped. You idiot! Descarina growls. You let him get away! I will have my time to settle things with him, Hui says, beginning to walk away. The question is, who will you face first, me or him? Descarina balls her fists in anger. Then we should settle this right now and leave no doubts. Hui sighs loudly, hating to admit what he is about to say. If we continue at this, whichever of us survives will be too weak to even make it to the tournament. Is that how you want things to end? Some weakling will steal our glory, all because we were both too prideful to know when to call it quits. We will settle this in the tournament, Descarina growls. I will prove that I am the only one worthy of killing Yamura. Whatever, Hui says, waving a hand dismissively as he walks away. Try not to die before the tournament. The fighting pauses as another ship cuts through the mystical fog. Knowing that another group of 100 or more potential combatants are on board and ready to battle, those already on Jockey previously nervously await the ship's docking. The ship is the freighter Boken Sha, which disembarked from Osaka, Japan, 8 days ago. "Something is off," Alyssa whispers. "I sense it too," Bernard adds, readying his weapon. The humans form up on each other, regrouping and ceasing their individual battles for the moment. "Maybe I'm just not experienced with this, but I only sense a single large power on that boat," Provost Butler says. "That can't be right, can it? Shouldn't it feel like a bunch of smaller energies?" "Be ready," Alyssa warns them. "That is no ordinary power that you sense." Jake frowns. "You know, I was gonna say it reminded me of Yazatan energy." He pauses. "But not quite. It's different." Alyssa is surprised the team can sense divine energy, but does not comment. "I think that whatever is on that ship killed all of the other passengers." The Boken Sha pulls up to the docks, and mind-controlled slaves of Inyana work to prepare the ramp. Several minutes later, a single figure emerges onto the deck of the ship. Powerful winds lash out from the being's aura, destroying the ramp and scattering Inyana's workers. The being's skin is porcelain white, and her hair is as black as the depths of space. She was beautiful, but beautiful in a way that was almost terrifying. Her form was tall and elegant, clad in flowing robes that shimmered like storm clouds, caught in the morning sun, their hue shifting from silver to deep blue as they moved. Her long hair, the color of the sky before tempest, billowing around her, though no wind touched her directly. A crown of faintly glowing runes circled her head, symbols of an ancient power far older than anything present on the island. Her eyes, cold and unreadable, carried with them the vastness of the sky itself, boundless, ever-changing, and utterly indifferent to those beneath it. Using her winds to levitate, the woman ignores the ruins of the ramp and lowers herself to the ground with her own power. "Who the fuck do you think you are?" A boisterous Barlurga demon with the body of a gorilla and the snout of a crocodile growls, pointing a finger towards her chest. "We stopped fighting just so you could make this grand entrance?" The woman looks down at the demon's finger, then back up at his face. "Be gone," she says coldly, causing her winds to tear the Barluga into millions of pieces. The exertion of the woman's aura causes the humans and lesser creatures to struggle for their breath, sweating heavily. What is that power?" Allure gasps. She is having the greatest difficulty of the humans. "It's smothering," Danny says through gritted teeth. "I've never felt an energy like that before." Jake balls his fists, ready to be the first to challenge the newcomer. "If we don't deal with her now, she's going to play spoiler in the late game." "You cannot defeat her," Alyssa whispers. Jake is shocked to see the fear on the normally collected hunter's face. "That is no mortal being." "Not a mortal," Jake whispers. "So she is some kind of Yazata after all?" "Not Yazata," Bernard answers. "That is a god." "You can't be serious," Jake argues. "There's an actual god on the island?" Alyssa slowly nods, still unsure of what she should do next. The hunter's instincts are telling her to take Bernat and flee as far from the woman as possible. She is an Aesir. They are the gods and goddesses of myths and legends. Ancient divine beings, even older than the Yazata, Bernat adds, and many of them dwarf the Yazata in power. The air thickened, pulsating with a force so vast and overwhelming that his breath hitched in his throat. The whisper of the wind, once a gentle rustling through the trees, turned into an unnatural silence, a stillness that felt as though the island itself held its breath. Then the wind returned, not as a breeze, but as an undeniable presence. A howling gust swept through the clearing, bending the trees as if they were blades of grass, tearing leaves from their branches in a frenzied storm. The sky darkened more for a brief moment, as if the heavens themselves acknowledged the arrival of something beyond mortal comprehension. And then she was there. She did not appear in a burst of light or fire, nor with the theatrics of divine wrath. She simply was. One moment she did not exist in one place, and then the next she did. Her mere existence crushed the battlefield beneath an unseen weight. Warriors, monsters, demons, all were stricken with an instinctual terror that they could not explain. It wasn't simply that she was stronger than them. It was that she was something else entirely. The strongest combatants, those who had once slaughtered their way through countless battles, found themselves frozen, their survival instincts overriding their pride. Even the creatures that knew nothing of gods or divine hierarchies trembled in their places, their very essence recoiling from something so vastly beyond them. The towering beasts that once stalked the island, preying on warriors and lessened demons alike, whimpered and slunk back into the shadows, as if their presence alone might invite her wrath. The wind itself seemed to bow to her, whipping violently in every direction before settling around her in reverent stillness. But there were two who did not recoil in fear. From the shadows, Kazida and Dekarabia stood their ground, their twisted fallen forms rigid with something that was not hesitation, but loathing. Their gazes locked onto Ashera, their expressions curling into snarls of hatred so deep that it seemed almost primal. Once long ago they had been Yazata, divine warriors of their own kind, though they had long since fallen from grace. And though they were no longer what they had once been, something in their very essence remembered the wars, the ages of conflict, the endless struggle between what had come before them and what they had become. It was more than just a rivalry. It was hatred woven into the very fabric of their beings, something etched into them before they had ever fallen. Kazidia's darkened aura flared, a sickly, writhing black flame flickering around his form as he bared his sharpened teeth. Energy wings, torn and ragged, twitched with barely contained rage. An Aesir, he spat, his voice dripping with venom. Filth of the old world. Dekarabia sneered, his multiple shifting eyes narrowing in revulsion. So, the ghosts of the past still dare to walk the earth. You should have died with your era. Ashera regarded them both with an expression of perfect detachment, as if their hate was beneath even her consideration. She did not react. She did not acknowledge their defiance as a threat. She simply looked at them, and the wind howled in response. Should have figured that The scent of power would draw a few of you cockroaches out of hiding, Decoravia growls. You are my biggest competition here, the Aesir known as Ashera, goddess of wind, says. Taking you out now all but guarantees my victory. A Fomorian towering over all the other competitors, at over 12 feet tall, hefts a large stone and hurls it at the devils, putting an end to the break in the fighting. Kazuya pivots, breaking the stone with his fist and shattering it into millions of tiny pebbles. Ashera seizes the distraction, throwing both hands forward and sending a forceful gale into the devil's chest, sending him sprawling backwards. Decoravia attempts to flank the Aesir, but she senses his movements in the air around her and turns, sending out a spiraling cyclone that propels the devil out to sea. Kazuya rolls into a crouch and immediately uses his power of Chonryuku to initiate pyrokinesis and ignite the demigod in flames. Ashera raises a hand using her wind to draw sand up from the beach into a barrier in front of her to block the flames. Growling with fury, the devil attacks the barrier again and again until it shatters. Much to Kazuya's surprise, Ashera awaits the fall of her sand barrier with one hand outstretched. A gust of wind slams into the devil's chest, knocking him back through a grove of trees. This is insane, Jake whispers, watching Ashera and the devils duke it out. This is like a literal clash of the titans here. We had best stay back, Bernat cautions. This is going to get very ugly. Decoravia speeds across the ocean, returning to the island and tackling Ashera with crossed palms to the back of the neck. The blow propels the demigod through a hill, her back sending earth in all directions. Both devils snap their fingers, initiating pyrokinesis, but again Ashera is able to cancel out their flames with her wind control. You can't keep using the same defense against us. Kazuya grins, initiating thermokinesis to generate waves of heat from the ground all around the Aesir. Ashera darts up into the sky to evade the intense heat. Cursed, broken-winged insects, Ashera growls. You overstep your bounds. I am a divine being. You belong at my feet. Your kind or failed divinity, Decoravia says. You are as cursed and broken as we. Grinding her teeth together in anger, the Aesir goddess focuses her power to summon 4 massive wind dragons. The dragons each have the force of tornadoes and are given mild sentience to move and attack on their own. The devils dart across the beach, dodging the wind dragons with their superior speed. Dozens of lesser creatures are caught up in the winds and flung about like refuse. The devils land together and throw their arms out against the winds, straining against them, trying to hold them back with their Chonryuku powers. We can't hold the winds back, Decoravia strains, trying his hardest not to be pushed back any further. She's too powerful for us to fight against restrained. Only for a moment, Kazuya says. We cannot risk the notice of the Seraphim. The devils scream in unison, releasing their full power in one push that completely disperses Ashera's winds. The Aesir is stunned. She cannot believe that mere fallen angels could overpower her strongest divine magics. We must retreat for now, Kazuya says, chest heaving. If we continue to battle, we will not be able to make it to the start of the tournament. Releasing our full power has depleted our stamina considerably. In a flash of unnatural speed, Kazuya and Decoravia vanished, into the depths of the forest, leaving behind only a gust of foul air and the echo of their bitter loathing. Their hatred for the Aesir was undeniable, but even they were not foolish enough to challenge her directly, not yet. The beach, once a battlefield, filled with the sounds of clashing steel and agonized screams, fell into an eerie silence. The demons, the monsters, and all other entities that had filled the fray only moments ago had either fled or lay broken upon the blood-stained sands. The wounded groaned in agony, their bodies shattered, their spirits crushed beneath the weight of Ashera's mere presence. The dying could not even muster the strength to scream, their gazes dull with resignation as they stared into the sky, knowing that something far greater than them had passed judgment upon this battlefield. Only one group remained upright. The mages, clustered together near the battle's edge, were the last ones still standing. Not because they were the strongest, but because of their desperate, hastily erected barrier spells, woven from sheer survival instinct. Shimmering walls of arcane force pushed around them, flickering beneath the divine pressure radiating from the Aesir. Their protective magic had held, but barely. Their spells groaned under an invisible weight, the sheer magnitude of Ashera's presence pressing against them like the force of an approaching storm. She turned her gaze towards them. The moment her eyes fell upon them, the pressure in the air thickened. It was not an attack, nor was it an act of malice. It was simply the awareness of something far beyond mortal comprehension settling upon them, the weight of a god's attention. The mages stiffened, their instincts screaming at them to flee, but their feet were rooted to the ground. Every fiber of their beings told them they did not belong in her presence. Their spells, their knowledge, their centuries of carefully studied magic, all of it felt meaningless before the raw, effortless power standing before them. Provost Butler nearly collapsed to his knees. His lips trembled, his body shivering as he gasped. What is she?" No one answered. They all knew. A god. A true god. And they were still alive only because she had allowed it. "Oh crap," Danny whispers. "She's looking right at us."